A lot of subscribers have contacted me and talked about, and asked me to talk about the situation in Cameroon. What's happening? What's going on? We've been seeing increasing violence, but only in a specific area, and it's not by accident. And so I'm going to bring you the lowdown. I know a lot of people have been doing videos and, appealing to the peoples, but what's really happening? It's wickedness and evilness of the highest order. Now, just a bit of background. Cameroon, for those who don't know, is a country in Central Africa. It's bordered by Nigeria, Chad, Central African Republic, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, as well as the Republic of Congo. Now, the unique thing about Cameroon is that it's actually it's a federation of a French-speaking part and an English-speaking part. So after they gained independence, half of Cameroon had actually been, was under a British colony, the other half was under a French colony, and they came together and formed one federation, although the parts that are Anglophone have remained predominantly Anglophone, and those are in the north and southwest. And it's kind of like they're together as a federation, but those parts have really maintained their British influence. Now, the current crisis has everything to do with the elections that are taking place on October 7th this year. It ain't got nothing else to do with nothing. And what happened is that the crisis actually began in October in 2016, guys. And so far, unfortunately, 163 people have been killed and 160,000 people have been displaced, and about 20,000 have actually sought refuge in Nigeria. Now, the main areas of violence, and this should not surprise you, are actually in North and Southwest Cameroon, the two areas that used to be British colonies. And the current president, President Biya, he's been in power since 1982. He's 85 years old. I mean, it's his time to go. And he's been in power since like the 80s, for about 36 years. And he's, of course, from the French-speaking part. He's heavily backed by the French government. And, one has to ask the questions. Is the insecurity linked to France? Does the French have a hand in what's happening? Because you see, the main opposition to Biya is actually coming from the Anglophone speaking side. And now what the government has been saying, they've made all these arrests and try to, stop the violence, calling them insurgents. But what the government is actually saying, Biya's government, is that they won't be able to have elections in the Anglo-speaking part of Cameroon because of this unrest. I said, these guys take us for fools. They take us for complete idiots. You don't even need to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. Now, this is a significant disadvantage to his major opposition party. I mean, come on. They're not even hiding it. The country's largest opposition, actually their biggest base is in the Anglophone part of Cameroon. Now, the French president, and the reason I'm saying France is involved in this nonsense is because recently the French president actually made a speech, not so recently, let's say end of last year, where he said that French would be the first language of Africa. What the? What do you mean by that? And then you see him in Nigeria where the Boko Haram are fighting. It's the French troops that are helping the Nigerians. I mean, why can't the Africans be helping them? And then, Phil on the Advised Media Network, he actually did a brilliant expose and actually attached to the article about it, about the 11 ways that the French still control their colonies. And, did you know that former French colonies are still paying colonial debt for the infrastructure that was built by the French during colonial times over 50 years ago? Did you know that their national reserves are all kept in France to the tune of $500 billion and they can only get 15%? Did you know that France actually has the right of first refusal on any raw material, natural resource discovered in the country, and that priority is given to French companies whenever anything, for public procurement, public infrastructure, all of that. And then you think France doesn't have a role in the violence that is going on in Cameroon? You don't think they're backing their French president and hoping, their francophone speaking president will stay in power? Well, I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, I'll be giving you guys some shocking information about Biya. Shocking. We'll be right back. Now, before I get into the shocking, side of Biya that you need to know, which is just too heavy, I thought there's some quick facts that you should know about him. Now, this man, Paul Biya, has been the president of Cameroon for 35 years, which means 60% of his population, because 60% of Cameroonians are actually below the age of 25, were born into his presidency, so they've never even known another life, which is total madness. Now, he is famously known as, globally, as the absentee president, and out of these 35 years that he's been president, 30 have been spent outside of Cameroon. I mean, some of these things just make you want to cry. So he's only basically spent 5 years of his 35-year presidency in the country. And get this, every year he goes to his other residence, his official residence actually, is in Geneva, Switzerland, where he takes a presidential suite plus like 4 floors of the most expensive hotel. His hotel bill has come to $182 million. And guess how much an average Cameroonian earns? $1,400 a year. Now, his salary is supposed to be 200 euros a month. Do you think he's earning 200 euros a month? And guess who? What? He only travels by private jet. So Cameroon couldn't afford to buy him a private jet. So now he rents the private jet from the Kuwaitis to the tune of about $400,000. I mean, you know what? If it wasn't so funny, it would be sad. Or if it wasn't so sad, it would be funny. Now, in 2017, this ninja signed in 12 laws in 3 days, clearing and completing the entire year's legislative agenda in the space of 3 days. Do you think he even knows what he signed? And this is the worst. Now, in 2016, when 75 people died, it took the man 2 days to return from his honeymoon suite in Geneva to his country, and he actually had to issue his condolences after landing in the airport. Complete madness. Anyway, let's go back to the program and see the even crazier, evil stuff that I was able to dig up. Welcome back to Africa Watch on the Dr. Mumbi Show. We need to be sending our prayers to Cameroon that, the 36 years of dictatorship may come to an end, and that, there not be this violent outbreak. And almost, a few of my subscribers have actually called it a genocide against the English-speaking members of Cameroon. Because, the French want to keep their dirty hands on Cameroon. Because Cameroon is one of the 14 states that still pays colonial tax to France. Cameroon is still one of the states that gives exclusive rights to France to supply military equipment and train the country's military officers. And, it's really tricky for the West Africa and the former French colonies in West Africa, because all of them have and continue to have an existing French military presence. So when they start to say independence, freedom, what do you think will happen? Now, I'm just so emotional at Macron, and I've been figuring out why did France. Where did Macron come from? Nowhere. After Mitterrand, who was, I think Mitterrand must have been like 60, 70 years old. All of a sudden they get a 41-year-old who had lived in Nigeria, who was part of the banking system. Was he part of the Rothschild system? I don't know. Definitely a Freemason. All of a sudden he's president of France, and all of a sudden he's just pushing his agenda in Africa, because we know the last frontier is Africa and everybody's doing it. You know, the Chinese are doing it, the British are trying to create an empire 2.0, and the French are doing it, and that's why they've gotten this young 41-year-old, you know, French president to push this agenda. I mean, how arrogant of him to say that, you know, the first language of Africa is going to be French. And he received a lot of backlash. We didn't take it lying down. But, you know, can I tell you something? Okay, on a side note, you know, here in Kenya, right? So they collapsed our local supermarkets. There was one which was called Nakumatt, huge supermarket. I was told cash exchanged hands, allegedly, apparently. And guess which supermarket came into town? Carrefour. The biggest French supermarket is now, you know, feeding Kenyans. And Kenyans are loving it because they're like, oh, they're such good payers. Oh, you know, they pay us on time. Neo-colonialism, man. Anyway, you know what, I can't go on about that. But you guys, now I was doing some special research on Biya, who is the Cameroonian president, and I found that, you know, could he be a Freemason? Because what I've found with all these long existing presidents, and a lot of them who even come into power now, is that they always have occult connections. It's just like in the US, the way you'll have the holiday, you know, the huge Hollywood stars and stuff who are definitely into the occult, and then you'll have the boule, which is like the African American stars, like the Beyoncés of this world, who are part of their own little secret society. They think they're equal to the Mzungus, you know, the white people, but that's a lie. And I feel like all African presidents, what I'm finding in my research is all African presidents are also part of this, you know, presidential boule. Because, get this, in 2012, Biya actually chaired the closing ceremony for the Golden Jubilee of Freemasons in Douala, Cameroon, which was attended by all kinds of higher-ups. And there's this guy who's been imprisoned. Now, he's the Secretary General of one of the major parties. He's called Professor Titus Edzoa. And he published a book, and where he talked about the occult practices of the government. He talked about ritual killings. He talked about blood sacrifices. He talked about homosexuality. He talked about, you know, people high up in government sleeping with dead female corpses. Because I'm telling you, all presidents, the way the West has been able to maintain their power is because they brought their evil, dirty habits to the African presidents, who they entrap with all this stuff. And so, you know, the world is run by this Freemason order. And just to confirm, then this other guy came out, Charles Ateba, and he's actually the Cameroonian People's Democratic Movement's, he's in the council of that political party. And he also published a book on Cameroon. And he said Cameroon is suffocating under the dictatorship of sects, of secret societies. And he actually named people. So now there's this whole thing where, you know, the government officials have come and limited the publication of the book. But all kinds of sorcery. So could what we're seeing in the English speaking parts of Cameroon, could those be blood sacrifices for the elections in October 7th? Is power maintained through satanic worship? These are some of the questions we must ask, because what has been happening in Africa and across the world is not normal. The way power has been maintained since, you know, this neo-colonial order and this kind of veil and maze over our eyes that we couldn't even see clearly through is not normal. Anyway, our prayers are with the Cameroonians.